Today we're talking about building the trenches. I believe that building a strong offensive line is paramount for the success of the future of the Chicago Bears. Protecting Caleb Williams or whoever the Bears draft at number 1 overall is of the utmost importance. A cohesive and proficient offensive line not only protects the quarterback, but it provides stability for the entire offense. I've always believed in building the trenches, and today I'm taking a deep dive into the analytics of every player on the Bears starting offensive line, as well as who I project to start at each position, and I want to show off each guy's snap to pressure rates, their RAS scores, and their stats from 2023. Let's get right into it. It's been too long since the Bears fielded a top-notch group of offensive linemen. I believe Ryan Poles has done a nice job, but in order to really see that, you have to go back a few years and see what the offensive line looked like when he got here. We had 40-year-old Jason Peters as our starting left tackle. Cody Whitehair, Sam Mustipher, James Daniels, and Larry Borum rounded out our starting offensive line in 2021. Right now, even before the NFL draft and with months left of free agency, we have Braxton Jones as our starting left tackle, Tevin Jenkins is a stud at left guard, Coleman Shelton is a starting caliber center in the NFL, which is a huge upgrade. Nate Davis was great in 2022, but he struggled last year. But even if he doesn't bounce back, Ryan Bates is ready to step in at right guard. And then Darnell Wright has Pro Bowl potential at right tackle. I have high hopes for that dude. He is an absolute tone setter. But now let's dig into the analytics and check out the Bears' projected starting offensive line before heading into the NFL draft. If the season started today, this would be our projected offensive line. I've included each guy's stats from 2023, as well as their last 2 years of snaps per pressure, their age, and RAS scores. For their 2023 stats, I included their snaps played, along with their penalties, how many sacks they allowed, and how many pressures they've given up. The snaps per pressure I calculated myself. Let's go ahead and check this out. Braxton Jones had nearly as many penalties as Darnell Wright did last year, but in over 400 less snaps. Braxton Jones' biggest issue last year was the penalties. After failing to stop the bull rush as a rookie, Braxton still needs to continue getting better. I do believe he's a starting caliber tackle in the NFL with the upside to get even better. He allowed 32 pressures last year and actually did worse in snaps per pressure than he did as a rookie. But on the bright side, he only allowed 2 sacks in 724 snaps, and he graded out very well against the run. He's only 24 years old, and he's a Ryan Poles guy. Left tackle is such an important position, though, that I would like to see competition added here, but I am a big fan of Braxton Jones, and I love his upside. Next, we get to Tevin Jenkins, whose only problem in the NFL so far has been staying healthy. He is the best player on our offensive line. He plays at a high level. He can play either guard spot, and he can even play tackle if needed. He has Pro Bowl upside, and he's averaged over 40 snaps per pressure the last 2 years, an elite level of pass protection. And on top of that, Tev is graded out awesome as a run blocker as well. Tev is only 26 years old, and he's extremely athletic. The other issue with Tev for me is that he's entering the last year of his deal, and guards have been getting overpaid the last 2 years. I'd love to see Tev stick around long term. He's a favorite of mine and many others. I'm rooting for Tev to be a Bear long term. But now we get to the center position. Ryan Poles recently signed Coleman Shelton to a 1-year deal worth $3 million. He started 28 games over the last 2 years for the Rams, and he's done a great job. He's only 28 years old, and he scored a 7.69 on his RAS score. In 2023, he started all year, and he only gave up 2 sacks in 1,113 snaps. This is light years better than any center has performed for the Bears in Ryan Poles' entire 3 years here. Shelton played over 1,000 snaps, and he gave up a pressure about every 33 snaps. A very good number that was better than anyone on our offensive line last year, other than Tevin Jenkins. And on top of that, Shelton was even better in 2022, putting up a ridiculous 65.6 snaps per pressure allowed. This is a guy who I think is our clear starting center. I hear a lot of people talking about Ryan Bates, and I'll get to Bates in just a few minutes, but Shelton is our starting center if you ask me. This is a guy who should be an immediate upgrade over Lucas Patrick and Sam Mustipher, but the question becomes what the long-term plan is with him only being here on a one-year deal. I still think we need to draft a center. But next up is Nate Davis, who in my opinion is the biggest question mark on our entire offensive line right now. I thought Nate Davis was a great signing last year. I was pretty high on him. He was really good in 2022, but last year he struggled and dealt with some personal issues. He gave up 29 pressures and he was only credited with one sack, but part of that was that Fields bailed him out multiple times. Davis struggled staying healthy and he didn't grade out well against the pass or the run. I do think that Nate Davis can bounce back and have a much better year this season, but to me, he still remains a question mark right now. I'll revisit this in just a minute, but let me get to our last starter on the offensive line, Darnell Wright, who was Ryan Poles' first ever pick in round one of the NFL draft. During his rookie season, he had his ups and downs, and he even played through an injured shoulder. But Darnell was our only lineman to play every snap last season, and he's the only guy who didn't miss multiple games. But when you play more snaps than anyone else on the line, and you go against top tier pass rushers most of the year, that led to Darnell's numbers not looking that impressive. He allowed 7 sacks on the year, a whopping 51 pressures, and he had 11 penalties. All three of those led the team. But you have to add context there as well because Darnell played 400 plus more snaps than anyone else on our entire offensive line. He was also a rookie, so I'm not that worried about Darnell Wright. He was a monster run blocker and he flashes signs of elite technique. I think he will take a huge step forward this year and he could battle Tevin Jenkins to be the best player on this offensive line. Tevin Jenkins and Darnell Wright are two absolute tone setters. But now let's go back to Nate Davis, who's my biggest worry on the line. Let's compare Ryan Bates to Nate Davis over the last 2 years. Since Bates didn't play much at all last season, we're going to go back to 2022 and 2021 for him. And when you compare Bates 2022 to Nate Davis last year, Bates was clearly better. In 300 plus more snaps, he had 3 less penalties, gave up the same amount of sacks, just one, and allowed less pressures. He averaged almost 10 more snaps per pressure than Nate Davis did. And then when you go back another year, looking at Ryan Bates 2021 versus Larry Borum's 2022, Bates had an awesome 58.8 snaps per pressure that season, which is even better than Nate Davis's 48.7 snaps per pressure that he put together in his last year with the Titans. So both guys have put together some very impressive years, but Nate Davis struggled and got hurt last year, and Ryan Bates was a backup all season. Both guys are the same age at 27 years old, but Ryan Bates has much more athleticism. He scored a 9.57 on the RAS compared to Nate Davis's 6.17. Add all of this up, and if Nate Davis struggles again this year or gets hurt, I think Ryan Bates could actually take his job. I think that's the plan right now. Coleman Shelton to be the starting center, and then you have Ryan Bates as the insurance guy. Think about it. We have Nate Davis's struggles last year, paired with the fact that both Nate Davis and Tevin Jenkins have battled injuries, and it's clear that Ryan Bates is the insurance policy of our interior offensive line. He can play either guard spot or center, and he could actually be better than Nate Davis. So I actually think it's possible that our best O-line could end up being Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Coleman Shelton, with Ryan Bates at right guard, and then Darnell Wright finishing it off. No, don't take this wrong though. I like Nate Davis a lot. I think he can bounce back and have a big year. But to me, it's clear that Ryan Bates was brought here as an insurance policy for that position. I view Ryan Bates as a similarly talented player who might just be a better fit in this system, who, when you compare him to Nate Davis, is also much cheaper and more athletic. So if Bates ends up taking Nate Davis's job by the end of the year, then that would mean we could cut Nate Davis in the offseason and save a bunch of money and then potentially use some of that money to re-sign Tevin Jenkins, who's going to be a free agent next year. So I think there's still a lot to play out in the interior of our offensive line, but to me, Coleman Shelton is the starting center. The rest of the offensive line is pretty set, with the only real battle potentially coming at right guard between Nate Davis and Ryan Bates. But then I wanted to check on our swing tackle position a little bit as well. Ryan Bates is clearly our best interior backup, and then we have Larry Borum and Matt Pryor battling for that swing tackle job right now, and they both struggled majorly the last time they were on the field. Larry Borum was not that good last year, giving up a pressure every 16 snaps. Meanwhile, Matt Pryor didn't play much last year, but he gave up a pressure every 18 snaps the last time he did play in 2022. Both guys performed much better the year before, so the hope here is that one of them bounces back and can lock up the swing tackle job, but I don't know how much faith I have in either guy. It looks like tackle might be a bigger need than most people think. The bottom line here is that the offensive line looks a lot better than it did when Poles took the job 2+ years ago. But his job building the trenches is not done yet. Neither Matt Pryor or Larry Borum look like the answer at swing tackle. Both guys have shown potential, but help is still needed at tackle. All in all, without a reliable offensive line, the Bears will continue to struggle to sustain drives, protect our young quarterback, or be able to sufficiently score points and attack defenses. This has been an issue in Chicago for some time now, ultimately hindering our ability to build sustained success in the NFL or take the NFC North. To me, the quarterback position and the offensive line go hand in hand. And therefore, I believe Ryan Poles needs to continue investing in and prioritizing this offensive line going forward. These new monsters of the Midway need to be different. Let's be monsters in the trenches. Keep building this offensive line, and let's finally get it stabilized. I put a ton of work into this one, and I appreciate everyone who watches. Let me know what you guys think. Please remember to hit that like button for me. Stay tuned. We're getting closer and closer to the NFL draft. And until next time, bear down.